Pablo Escobar. The most notorious drug trafficker of all time, Escobar ran Colombia's Medellin cartel from the mid-1970s until the late 1990s. In a career that made him almost $420 million per week in the cartel's prime, it put him at a net worth of over $25 billion. Along with the help of his cousin Gustavo, Pablo built an empire which produced around 80% of the cocaine exported from Colombia during the time. One winter night, this guy burned $2 million in cash just to start a fire, which would keep his daughter warm. That's insane, right? Anyway, through years of war against the government, terrorism against the working-class Colombians, and holding a monopoly in the drug market, Escobar made himself quite a few enemies. The government had been chasing him for years while seizing many of his houses and stashes of money. And rival cartels, along with the help of the DEA and communist guerrilla groups, started taking down his labs around the country. In a short period of time, Pablo had gone from being ranked as the 7th richest man on the planet by Forbes to having no money at all. He was eventually tracked down and met his end on the rooftop of an apartment building in Medellin. The Rodriguez brothers. Miguel and Gilberto Rodriguez controlled the Cali cartel throughout the same time period as Escobar, except these brothers operated in a completely different way to Pablo. They made significantly less money than the Medellin cartel, but they were okay with that as it allowed them to keep under the radar and launder their money through genuine businesses. They actively assisted members of the DEA and funded communist guerrilla groups in the search and eventual death of Pablo. In the following months, the brothers negotiated with the Colombian government in a deal which was supposed to see them go to prison for a reduced period of time and keep the majority of their drug money. However, the DEA had different ideas. They kept trying to track down the brothers and eventually found a breakthrough when they raided one of their many homes and found Gilberto hidden in a secret compartment. It wasn't long before they found the location of Miguel, who was staying in a hotel block in the middle of Cali. They raided there, too, and with both brothers now in custody, any hope of a deal with the government had vanished. Ouch. Both Gilberto and Miguel were sentenced to life in prison, with the former passing away in May 2022. Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo. Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo was a true master of the drug trafficking game. Instead of fighting against other cartels for control of the Mexican market, he managed to join all of the country's cartels together to create a monopoly in which everyone would earn good money and reduce violence, at least in theory. Furthermore, Gallardo took advantage of the then corrupt Mexican government, paying them to ensure he would be kept out of prison and help him stay one step ahead of the DEA. After the murder of the DEA agent Kiki Camarena in 1985, under the order of Felix, the U.S. went after him with full force. He turned on a couple of his cartel associates who were arrested by the Mexican government and named as the men behind Agent Camarena's death. This kept Felix afloat for a while longer, but under immense pressure from the DEA, the Mexican government eventually arrested him in 1987, and they put him in prison, where he would still run the cartel for many more years behind bars. Amado Carrillo Fuentes. Deemed the Lord of the Skies for his use of planes to transport product across the border to the U.S., Amado Carrillo Fuentes more or less became the successor of Felix Gallardo upon his arrest. Amado liked to keep a low profile, unlike other traffickers in the Mexican drug game. And in his peak, he was the second richest trafficker of all time. Unfortunately for Amado, his downfall didn't come directly through any of his own fault. Constant violence between the Sinaloa and Tijuana cartels made the Mexican government finally step up, and along with the DEA, they aimed to take down any traffickers and all traffickers in the country. With a ton of money in offshore accounts, Amado decided to leave the country and ride off into the sunset. But before he could leave, he would need to undergo facial enhancing surgeries to make him unrecognizable. And during a procedure, his heart gave out, and he would pass away aged 40 in Mexico City. Rafael Caro Quintero. Rafael Caro Quintero was a crucial piece in the commencement of Miguel Angel's empire. He was the main supplier of marijuana to Felix's operation. This guy was a genius. He discovered a way to grow seedless marijuana, meaning that the product was the same, but it was significantly smaller, which meant that he could conceal and transport significantly more product at no extra cost or risk. Rafa once had a weed field which stretched over 1,400 acres and had over 4,000 employees working on it, right in the middle of the Mexican desert. Unfortunately for Quintero, Felix had himself in hot water with the government over the murder of DEA agent Camarena and turned Rafa and other traffickers in to save himself. Quintero spent 28 years in prison and was released in 2013, but was recaptured and went back to jail on new drug trafficking charges. He remains there today. El Chapo. Joaquin Guzman, better known as El Chapo, first came through the ranks of the Sinaloa cartel under the guidance of Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo. Years later, after the capture of Felix and the death of Amado Carrillo Fuentes, El Chapo became the biggest trafficker in Mexico, a position which he would not give up for many, many years. Throughout his time on top, Chapo was known for the order of many violent attacks and is said to be responsible for the deaths of almost 35,000 people. He was captured in both 1993 and 2014, but managed to escape on both occasions through underground tunnels built miles long. He was recaptured in 2016, and soon after he was extradited to the United States, where he will spend the rest of his life rotting in a cell. El Mayo. Ismael Mario Zambada Garcia, also known as El Mayo, was known for his specialty of transporting product. This guy didn't use trucks or planes to smuggle drugs into the United States. He used shrimp boats. That's right. Mayo spent many years as a partner of El Chapo, but unlike the latter, he kept a very low profile. Mayo spent decades hiding from the feds in various rural mountain villages in Mexico, and he was finally arrested in the United States in 2024, as he was lured into the United States and arrested in a Texas airfield. Incredibly, at the age of 76, this was the first time El Mayo had ever been arrested. The dude spent over 6 decades hiding from cops and was a master at it. Griselda Blanco. Known as the only person Pablo Escobar was ever afraid of, Griselda Blanco was a real badass. Unlike the other cartel leaders on this list, Griselda ran her cartel from within the United States. After she and her second husband settled down in New York in the 1960s, she began her life as a trafficker. Despite their startup in the Big Apple, Griselda's empire truly flourished after her move to Miami almost a decade later. After years of trafficking narcotics and ordering the killings of thousands of people, Griselda was eventually arrested and was to be sentenced to a life in prison. However, a phone sex scandal broke out between Griselda's former hitman, Jorge Ayala, and 2 secretaries from the Florida State Attorney's Office meant that any evidence provided by Ayala would be deemed inadmissible. Griselda pled guilty to only 3 counts of murder, and after only 20 years in an American prison, she returned home to Colombia. 8 years later, Griselda Blanco would leave a butcher shop in Medellin, where she would be gunned to death by 2 men passing on a motorcycle. Griselda was pregnant with her 5th child.